Good evening, everyone. My name is Joshua Reynolds with American Legacy Network, and I am here with a special guest this evening. His name is JP Reynolds.
Yeah.
If you didn't notice, we do have the same last name. We also happen to have the same mammy and pappy, mother and father, who are Lillian and Rodney Reynolds. And so the reason I'm sitting with JP Reynolds tonight is because he is a producer on American Legacy Network. He produces a show called Memoir Noir. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mr. J.P. Reynolds really quickly. And I have a very abridged bio, and I may give you some other tidbits. Hopefully not embarrassing, because I do have special information.
Don't give him too much, man.
Don't give too much. All right, let me read your official abridged bio. Called Remarkably Special by allhiphop.com, JP Reynolds is an innovative artist, rapper, and songwriter with an eclectic sound, The creator of Rap Gumbo.
Yeah.
His music is a powerful blend of jazz, funk, gospel, and soul. In addition to music, JP is an entrepreneur, coach, activist, and minister. In 2012, he founded Peace and Power Media, an artistic hub that produces music and multimedia content. He was also born in Cleveland, Ohio, grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. Shout out to all the hip hop music in New York. He did both his undergrad and graduate studies at Yale University.
This boy.
I
wonder if they could tell we're brothers, man. This is hilarious.
And then also, a fun fact is, you know what? I'll leave that fun fact for later. But he is an Aquarius, if I have the zodiac correct.
Correct.
And he is a phenomenal writer, orator, and all those things. He also once opened up for Lupe Fiasco.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Back at the Black Solidarity Conference at Yale University in 2008. That was.
Yeah. Many moon ago.
Yeah, a little while ago. Another bit about his bio. If you see in our backgrounds, we both have something similar going on. He has a brick. I have a brick or two. He is a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, initiated through the New Gamma chapter in spring 2007. He represents the Deuce Club.
Yes. Deuce is wild.
Yes. So that is my short bio of JP Reynolds. So
you added all types of stuff in there, man.
I mean, the abridged bio on your website, officiallyjp.com, is abridged. So yeah. I wanted to cross that bridge a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Good to be on here, man. This is great.
So, you are a musical artist who is now a filmmaker. And so that's just, we're gonna call a spade a spade. You're a filmmaker. How did you end up getting into filmmaking and marry, how did you get into filmmaking? We'll go that way.
Well, yeah, shout out to all the filmmakers out there. That's the first time I think anyone's ever called me a filmmaker. But I've had to wear many hats. Like I'm an independent music artist, so in being independent, a lot of times when I don't have the budget for things or the resources for things, I have to figure stuff out on my own. So I have to, be very do-it-yourself type of mentality. So in doing so over a decade, really, I've had to just figure stuff out and kind of be as use my cunning, kind of use my faculties as best as possible to get the result that I envision. So I guess that's kind of the entry point for me, right? I mean, in terms of music videos, having to figure out who can shoot what, when they can shoot it, figure out angles, figure out thirds, just a lot of research, independent research. Because if I have an idea, I'm the type of person who wants to make an idea come to life. So I didn't have any formal training with it necessarily, besides like the University of YouTube, which I recommend for anyone who wants to get into things that doesn't have the access to more traditional institutions. The institutions from which I came didn't necessarily train me in these spaces. So I learned a lot of stuff on my own. So when it comes to production, the way I approach it is just kind of high level production, right? Like there's a vision, there's a thing you want to create, what needs to be done to create that thing, what do you need to learn, who do you need to partner with, what money do you need to raise, what tools do you need, what equipment, what space, just asking all of those questions to coordinate whatever you need to generate the results you want. So that comes from my music background though, because music, I need to figure out who can produce the records, who can mix the records, where can I go to get these records mastered, how can I get music videos out, who can shoot these videos, how do I edit? So along the way, in addition to, building the skill of high level production, I built a lot of skills of, like the interstitial things, like the actual on the ground, like design, edit, writing copy. I've had to figure that stuff out.
Wow. So you kind of have developed a skill set throughout your time as an artist, it seems.
Yeah.
And so the transition to developing a formal program for American Legacy Network, it kind of was, just osmosis in a way.
I mean, yeah, part of it is, I don't know if I call it osmosis. I think it's just a matter of sweat equity.
Okay.
I mean, I also come from the perspective where I'm just like, we're not where we want to be, right? Like, I don't want to actually be doing all of these things. But in order to get to the place where we can partner with people who have experience and expertise, we got to get it done. In the meantime, we got to figure it out until we can get to another level where we can say, all right, now we can partner with these folks because we have the resources, we have the backing, we have the brand power, whatever it is. We got to figure it out on the way to getting in the rooms or in the relationships with those types of folks. So for me, that's what it is. It's more sweat equity and just figuring it out till we don't have to no more. So that's where I am with it when it comes to being a producer on that level.
Awesome. So the show, I noticed, was initially called one thing and now it's the other. Yeah. So what I'm referencing actually is the original title of the show was Conversations with Greatness. And now the show is called Memoir Noir. Can you walk us through, how that shift happened?
Yeah. A couple reasons. The first is that, while Conversations with Greatness is a descriptive title, it isn't necessarily sexy. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I wanted to take the essence of what Conversations with Greatness was. It's also hard to say, right? So like, I just wanted to switch it up. And from the conversations that I had early on, I think we'll talk about this, right? Like I talked to Bill Salter, an amazing composer and writer and songwriter. I talked to the Velma and Norman Hill, civil rights activists in Chicago, back in the 50s and 60s. And when I was talking to them, I realized that we were just I was getting their stories, right? Like these are folks who have done really amazing things, who don't necessarily get that much attention, who don't get that much, they don't get that much traffic when it comes to what is known about them. So like we're kind of getting a chance to tell their story. We're trying to get a chance to, have them share memoir, right? Obviously in a different format. It's not the written text or the written word or book, but it's a memoir. And noir, it rhymes with memoir. I'm a rhymer. You know what I'm saying? They both come from a French both those words come from like a French background. And when I think of French, I think of like Paris, James Baldwin, folks being able to find solace in Paris during the 60s and 70s, right? They would go over there and they'd be like, yo, I can breathe free out here. But then also like what noir represents, right? Like noir represents Blackness. It represents shadow. And I want to be able to take folks out of the shadow and say, yo, they've been in the shadows of folks, right? Like the hills, and that's not a bad thing, right? Like these things work the way they work. But the hills, they worked under Bayard Rustin. A lot of folks know Bayard Rustin's name, right? Bill Salter worked with and worked under, not I want to say under, but he worked with Bill Withers. And a lot of folks know Bill Withers' name, right? So even in that that those great Black stories that they have, they also have their great story that shows the triumph of their life in the Black body. So I wanted to kind of highlight that. And I felt like it was time for a shift. We hadn't done a conversation in a long time. And then obviously after the pandemic came about and after the uprisings, this iteration of the uprisings came about, felt like time for a shift. So kind of just went with it. And that also goes along with the shift of the name of the whole kind of programming structure. It used to be called American Legacy XL. So the first program that we did, the first Conversations with Greatness program we did was on American Legacy XL. And what we're seeing, this is like kind of what happens when you do it yourself, right? Our dad is the founder of this thing. And my inclination to figure it out and to do it myself until we don't have to no more comes from him. So what folks are witnessing is us figuring it out. Mm-hmm. Folks are witnessing the building of a thing in real time. So as we've gotten more clarity over the last couple of years, we've gotten more clear on what the verticals are for American Legacy. What is the American Legacy brand? How is it transitioning? What are the areas we're representing? What is the structure that we're gonna hammer down? So the shows change, the platform change, those name changes, those brand changes are evidence of like this thing growing and moving and being built while we're flying the airplane, right? What is it? We're building the airplane while we're flying it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of that to this entrepreneurial kind of spirit that we got. So yeah, man. Yeah.
I
was talking for a long time just now.
Now you're good. I think the longer answers are the better answers because you're really going in depth here. And I'm going to continue to kind of dig throughout this process because, as Meet the Producers, I want to meet you, JP Reynolds, but also meet the process, understand, because everybody has their own artistic process.
Yeah.
So part of the process of producing the show is obviously having guests, right? And so you mentioned some absolute legends that you got a chance to sit down with. The first episode was with Bill Salter, and that was on one of the mobile museums.
Yes.
Then you sat down with Dad in Sylvia's restaurant, and then it looked like you were in Norman Velma Hill's home.
I was, yeah, it was a beautiful home.
And so, and I peeped all the masks that they had on the walls, and so they're just really tapped into the culture. So the question is, how do you go about the process of securing these legends? Because even with Memoir Noir, you caught him while he was in the studio working on something.
Yes.
Together. I think I remember the song was called. So how do you identify who you want to talk to? Who are these, great people with whom you want to converse, and how do you get in contact with them and secure them for dialogue and for conversation?
Yeah. So a couple different things come to mind here. The first is that being resourceful, right? Thinking about being resourceful as an entrepreneur, and again, as we're building this ship, as we're steering it. The founder of American Legacy, our dad, Rodney Reynolds, has a lot of context, has a large network that has extended itself from what the brand has done over the last 25 years. So the magazine in its original form, American Legacy, the magazine had a lot of connections from building up the culture. So there's folks that still answer the phone for Dad, right? There's folks that still say, yeah, I'm definitely willing to do something. I'm definitely willing to have a conversation or come through or do whatever is necessary or whatever you ask. So that's actually really important, right? The longevity of the brand and the integrity of the brand, where Rodney Reynolds can hit somebody up and just be like, yo, you got this new idea, you down? And they're like, yeah, we're down, I'm down. So I think that speaks to the brand integrity and the longevity of the brand. And that comes from partnership with me and Dad, right? Like Dad and I will talk and he'll say, this would be a good idea for a conversation, or I'll bring somebody up and say, this would be a good idea for a conversation. It just so happens that the first couple of ones that we produced were with people that had some like overlapping interest areas with me, right? So we had Bill Salter, a musician, legendary composer. We also had civil rights activists, right? So those things kind of like, you know, they overlap with things I'm interested in. So it's easier for me to dig my teeth into the material or dig my teeth into what the conversation will be about. But yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to, again, this DIY model, this entrepreneurial spirit of saying, we know these people. These are people who are really interesting and have very compelling stories. Let's have a conversation with them. And then we'll reach out and just set it up, right? It's just calendar work and just figuring out when people are free. And then I'll go through the process of saying, what do we need? What needs to be there? Who do we need to bring on board for this thing? I mean, a couple of these things we shot on like a camera phone. Like we shot on my iPhone. I had an iPhone 6 that was taking the B-roll shots with the Velma Hill episode, with the Hill episode. And I had another DP shoot it. So yeah, man, we just be putting it together. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, yo, what do we need? What needs to happen? These are the elements. Let's put it together. And then I've edited all the shows so far. So I have been on I've been in Final Cut Pro and pulling photos and pulling, identifying the fonts that we need to identify and identifying, extra video clips and things that we can kind of put in there to make it feel real. So that's the process. We got some more coming up. I think for me as a producer and as a host, because I also host the show, I'm not just a producer. I'm obviously wearing kind of all the hats on it until I don't have to no more. But I want to. That's actually. I mean, wearing the hats until you don't have to anymore is the name of the game of what we're doing right now, right? Literally, right? Like, Dad has worn so many hats that he was not familiar with, hats that he's like had to have a growing, he's had to have a learning curve for, and he just figured it out. He's just like, all right, this is what we need. Let's figure out how we can make it happen. So I'm definitely kind of following in those footsteps as we continue building the ship, and it's a really interesting and exciting thing to be a part of. But yeah, that's the process, Yeah, the calendar work is important too. The calendar work, I think, is a skill again that I learned from music. That is, and from I have a live band. I have a small team of people, and who are all busy. So calendar work is so important, and reverse engineering is so important, right? If we know we want to have a thing happen on November 15th, like it's wild too. Like in my mind, I just kind of happen to know what days of the week are aligned with the date of the month. It just happens like that because I'm used to looking at the calendar all the time. So if I know a thing, I need a thing to happen on November 20th, then I have to do all the backwards plan. I have to do all the reverse engineering to figure out everything I need to have in place and set up a week before November 20th so that we're ready to go a week before, right? Like it's all calendar work. So if we say we have this person is available on these 3 dates, then I have to get myself ready for one of those dates and have to move stuff around, I have to get available to do all the research I need to have all the background information, to interview a person, or really have a conversation with a person. So it's so much calendar work. It's a lot of calendar work of, times and dates and what do we need to have by when. Big piece of it.
So there was something you touched on, specifically you said you use an iPhone 6 to shoot some B-roll. Now I'm going back in a little bit of what you were just saying. But as I was watching the episodes, I did notice what I thought was kind of a common denominator about the aesthetic, the visual aesthetic of the show, of the conversations and now the memoirs. Did you have in mind what visual aesthetic you wanted? So for me, I felt like even though I'm looking to a camera, I feel like I'm actually sitting down with you and your guest, especially at the Velma Hill, the Norman Velma Hill interview. But I felt like it wasn't just I'm looking at a point and shoot, but I feel like I'm looking at it as if I'm sitting on the couch and I just happen to not be talking. So was that intentional? And did you go into it with an idea of like, here's how I want, this is what I want the viewer experience to be. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we want it to be engaging. Attention spans on the internet are very short. and there's a lot of competing video. I think I've seen numbers where it's like 95% of internet traffic is video content. I've seen some numbers where it's like on Facebook, there are 2.5 centuries worth of video. I'm like, wait, y'all are measuring this not in like minutes or hours, in centuries? Like, you got centuries worth of video on this one social media platform? Like, that's insane to even consider, right? So part of the challenge of doing a longer form video or doing a documentary style video is, how can we be engaging aside from the content and the conversation and the strength of what's being discussed, right? So part of it is like, all right, how do we make this thing dope? And like, for me, there's a limitation, and a lot of times limitation breeds creativity. So limitation is, well, we only got 2 cameras, right? Like, and we only got one. We got the deep at that for the Hills episode. The director of photography, his name is Malcolm Douglas Brown, dope shooter from Brooklyn. He's also a fraternity brother of ours. Resourcing, right? Resources. He was the DP, but he's also like shooting everything. He's shooting everything, right? So he's manning multiple cameras by himself. So we're like, all right, these are the resources we have. We're gonna make this work. So he's like going back and forth and, you know, changing the angle of camera B while camera A is rolling on the tripod, and so we can get different angles. That's like, part of that is like figuring it out again, because we also don't want to ruin the organic nature of the conversation, right? We're not like trying to reshoot anything. We're not trying to like after we start talking, we just got to catch it. We got to capture it, because it's going to be a conversation. And there's a couple of things that I've watched to kind of get a feel for what we're trying to go for in terms of content, right? So there was a series of conversations called Iconoclast. And I'm thinking the one in particular was between Dave Chappelle and Maya Angelou, and it was like striking. I mean, obviously those figures, it was literally a meeting of the legends. It was it was Iconoclast, right? It was and it was interlocutors discussing really, really crazy topics. People that you would love to see have a conversation together, they brought them together, right? And I'm looking at how they shot things, and how this is something that I want to emulate in terms of the editing or the shooting of it. The shooting and the editing of it is, I want people to feel like they're at the table with us. So, you know, I want them to feel like they are a part of the conversation, because it is supposed to be a conversation. It is supposed to be a sharing of information and story. So part of that is like, yo, how do we shoot something that feels like we in the kitchen chopping it up? How do we shoot something where it feels like we on somebody's back porch, just kicking back, talking about whatever, right? Which is hard to do. Again, obviously, the limitation is what kind of generates the creativity to try to figure it out. But that's the goal. That's the vision for it. That's the feel, at least for the viewer. And then also just kind of taken from the documentary style. Just yeah, that's the look and feel that we're going for.
Got you. Well, I can definitely say you definitely have executed on that look and feel thus far. So it's good. Man. Yeah, it's good to see that, you know, what you were actually going for as an artist is something that is definitely received by the audience. And just as a plug, where you can find this content, everyone, is of course on AmericanLegacyNetwork.tv. So we talk about, you know, the branding and talking about how that shifts and being able to be adapt as an artist. And, you know, this one kind of marries part of the conversation that you had with Bill Salters. This next question I have, I think, marries it too. Or part of the conversation you have with Bill Salter and the conversation with Norma and Velma Hill is, you know, the Nina Simone's quote came up, and it is how can you be an artist and not reflect the times? And how do you feel that memoir noir is contributing to, you know, reflecting the times, or is that something that you're looking to do with memoir noir?
I mean, I think it's my approach towards history in general, which is that history informs the present and the future. And we're in a place right now in our country in particular. I think this is something that's maybe global, unfortunately, but definitely in our country, folks don't know their history. Folks don't be reading. Folks don't know their history. And I think it is detrimental. It's something that is, it's something I deeply lament, honestly, right? In terms of where we are as a culture. So hearing people's stories, whether they're present or historic, can inform where we are and where we're going. And I just believe in the power of storytelling. I believe in the power of people's stories, and I believe in the power of people telling their stories, because there's always some type of wisdom that we could glean from hearing these stories. So, you know, when we're hearing them from folks, thankfully, who are still with us, right? And that's not going to be all the memoir noir conversations. There will be some with people who are current people, right? Because that's also part of why we wanted to make the switch, where it's not just history, right? Maybe people making history now, as well as people who've made history in history. So that's going to always be a part of it for me. I think the reliance is on the fact that people telling their stories is really important, and especially folks who haven't necessarily had the platform to do so before, who've really impacted some communities in some really mighty ways. So yeah, man, we're gonna reflect the times regardless, and the times that we have now are informed by the past, and we need to really come to grips with it.
Yeah. That's very real. I mean, I think, you know, with the Velma, with the Hills rather, I think there was a second person you had there as a part of the conversation in addition to yourself that I think was interesting to talk about, reflecting the times, but also kind of a bridge between, you know, legends that are of the past, but also communing and speaking with and having dialogue with people who are forging their own way in the present. And so you had Derica Purnell on the show with you. And so how important is it as a producer, as a host, as an artist to to my wearing many hats until you
all these hats, baby.
All these hats.
All these hats.
So
until I ain't gotta wear them.
But how important is it for you to be able to engage in conversation and bring in people like Derica, who have major voices in what's going on today?
This is another piece of what I lament about our current society, is that somehow folks think that leaders are supposed to know everything, and they don't. And having folks at the hip or in your community, or that you can in communication with or on community with, is super important. So one thing that I feel like, and even in wearing all of my hats, and one of the really important things of knowing things is knowing when you don't know something. And for me, I'm like, well, listen, if I'm going to have a conversation with civil rights activists, sure, I've had a history in activism and education, but like, there's some people who are really in the field for real. Let's bring them to the conversation, because they're going to have insight and they're going to have expertise that I don't have. So it's going to be very important for me to pull them into the conversation, because something richer will come from that. And yeah, I think that's an example of that with Derica. You know, that's the homie, and she, you know, she's doing some really, really great work, right? And she was then, right? That was a few years ago, and even now, just her work has ascended even more, and her voice has been amplified, which is amazing to see, and it's necessary. So when I have conversations with folks, you know, if I'm having a conversation with a chef, I mean, I cook, but I ain't no chef. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I might want to bring in a person who's maybe a contemporary of mine, who's a chef, who knows that world, in the conversation, because that makes sense.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You want someone who can do a bit more than oodles and noodles.
Oodles and noodles is valid. It's just not on the chef level. You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
You know, so I think it's important to. That's what I think is also important with the memoir noir piece, right? One of the things we wanted to do when we started the show, even as Conversations with Greatness, is make some links between, our generation, our elders, and then generations, under us. So that's something I think about as well, and thinking about having conversations with folks, right? Like everybody I talk to, I'm not going to necessarily have an insight into what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to have the expertise. I can still facilitate a conversation. I still have questions. I still want to know things. I still am a fan and a researcher of history and present. So sure, I could carry the conversation by myself, but also like if we have the resource and the availability of somebody else who's also in that space, why not? Like let's have them pull up.
Yeah, I think that what you're describing also sounds like something that definitely comes from Rodney Reynolds. Is the ability to identify people who are really great at what they do and engaging them. I mean, I think that comes from Lillian Reynolds as well. And so, I guess I want to dig into this a little bit, the concept of being able to identify others who are, who are good at what they do, who have more expertise. Can you speak to the importance of that and speak to, how to, learn how to get out of your own way in a way to make sure that you're actually bringing the best type of content?
Yeah. So again, this goes back to like, I know what I know, or I think I know what I know. I hope I know what I know. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that can go a whole lot of ways. I think I know what I know, but I also feel like I'm good at and I'm getting better at knowing what I don't know. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of that, there's things that I know that I don't know, but I have to do those things until I can get somebody who knows those things. I think that's really important when we talk about content creation or the building of something. So, speaking to the point about leveraging relationships or identifying people who are good at things and partnering with those people, that to me is like everything. It's also a very independent way of thinking about things, right? So even if I think about myself as an artist, there's people who are stronger than me at having conversations around business things, right? There are people who are stronger than me. Like I'm not a music director. While I may be a band leader, I'm not like a music director. I can't speak music theory to my keyboardist and my drummer, right? My music director can. I also don't play the guitar, but I have two guitarists who play it crazy, right? And I want that sound. So it also goes back to like the producer mindset, which is like high level. It's like, who's the high level thought person behind this? Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty good at that, right? I'm pretty good at saying, oh, this will sound great, or this will be great. But then there's some other people with some really great ideas that I hadn't thought about yet. So let's partner with those people and try to activate what they think. But then there are also people who are really good ideas people that have a zillion ideas but don't necessarily execute. And there's a lot of people who have really good ideas but aren't necessarily decisive about which idea to choose. I'm good at executing them. I'm good at executing and I'm good at being decisive. So I'm like, let's partner on that. There's a beneficial relationship here if we can partner on that thing. So that's something that I've adopted, and it's like partially by necessity because I'm independent, right? I'm not with a label. I'm not with a full sale, institution right now. So I had to figure it out on my own. And the way to figure it out is like you literally can't do everything. You have to delegate. And if you don't have the folks or the resources yet, do it until you don't have to anymore.
Right.
So, but that's part of executing. But on the way, I know for me, I always have my eye and ear open for talent, right? There are people right now who I have on my short list of people where I'm just like, once I get to this level and we can bring them in a real way and make it legitimate, that's who I'm picking. That's who I'm going with. That's who I'm calling. That's who's getting the text. Like, without question, right? But that's just the mindset of having to be a visionary and a builder, which again we get from our parents. But that's a huge piece of putting something together, where it's like you literally I literally can't be in multiple places at one time. I physically cannot hold the camera and also be on camera. It's not a thing, right?
No.
So it's like as many hats as a person may wear, they still got to like delegate. And it's important to realize like, yo, I need a writer's room. I need other people to read this thing.
Yeah.
It's actually not good for me to just write all of this or design all of this and not run it past nobody. I need a listening room. I need people to hear the zillions of tracks. Every time I make a track, there's 5 people I send it to every single time. And they'll be like, yeah, this is dope, bro. Go with this. I'm like, nah, that's not you. Or like, yeah, more of this. Or, yo, you should take this out. Like, every single song. It has to. And like, it's just, yeah.
So this is a great transition because you started talking about music, and I want to get into that. Before we do continue, I want to say to the folks in the Facebook world, if you have a question or just a statement or anything you want to say, I do have our Facebook open. So you can please put that question in there, and I'll be happy to relay that question to JP.
Pull up. Yeah. What questions you got?
So we have a comment from a cousin of ours, Mary Reynolds Haslerig. So she sends her greeting. She said, "Hey, cousins.
What up, cousin?
It's good to see you, cousin, on this
family reunion style."
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So let's get into music a little bit.
Okay.
Get into who JP Reynolds is as an artist outside of the filmmaking world. So you are a hip hop artist, correct? Is that what you? Okay. And the reason I specifically say hip hop artist is that some people, especially those in the hip hop world, distinguish between just being a rapper and being a hip hop artist. Can you take us through? Do you make that distinguish? Do you distinguish that, or why do people have that kind of mindset, and why do you consider yourself a hip hop artist?
Man, this is how much time we got, man. This is a long. I like. There's a lot with nomenclature, right? I it's for me, it's like it's different every day. It is what it is. I'm just trying to make the stuff. If I have to start thinking about nomenclature or what to call it, one, I usually try to get somebody else to figure out what to call it, which is what I've done over the past couple of years. Like, yo, what should we call this? What should this be? I don't know. I just do the stuff, right? Which goes back to the whole like leveraging relationships and identifying people who are good at things. But yeah, man, I think hip hop is a cultural identification marker for me. Hip hop as a form, as a Black art form, is something in particular, right? Even if we think about the beginnings of it, I think being a rapper is a person who operates under the umbrella of being a hip hop artist. And a rapper is technically different than a songwriter. Technically, a rapper is different than a performer, right? Like, so when I say hip hop artist, I want it to be as expansive as possible. But at the same time, identifying with hip hop, right? Like, I'm a Black artist who raps, who looks the way I look, with the hair, with whatever is coming. I'm coming with what I'm coming with. And this is an art form that I rely heavily on the folks who came before me, the folks who are here with me right now, the folks who ain't here yet. And for me, there's an importance with identifying with hip hop culture, because that's a lot of ways. That's the culture that made me want to do things the way I do it. And also, I am also a person who, the reason why in my bio you'll hear like jazz and blues and funk and gospel is because those are also genres that have influenced me. So, when we were in Cleveland, Ohio, riding down Miles Ali, we heard soul and funk in the car, right? Mm-hmm. If Mom was driving, we probably heard Yolanda Adams or some gospel in the car. We heard gospel in church. The first place I ever performed was in church, right? So I played the saxophone in middle school. I was in a jazz band, right? There's all these overlaps and kind of there's just a lot of overlaps and entry points for the type of art that I want to create and the type of music that I've been making. So as best as possible, I try to, I want that to all fall under the identification of being a hip hop artist.
So was there a defining moment for you at a certain time? Now I can bring up a song from 2003. I won't bring up the name of the song, because you've obviously evolved over the past 17 years, right?
Yes, thank you for sparing me.
Yes, yes.
You know too much.
There was a great guitar solo on that song, but anyways, we'll go past that. but
Oh, man.
but seriously though, what was the defining moment for you that made it so that you said, you know what, I'm gonna do this rap thing? Like, what was there a verse? Was there an artist? Was there a certain moment that it hit you where you just started spitting? You know what I mean? Like, what got you into spitting?
Spitting is one thing I be doing. I do be rapping. There's a couple of things I can think of, and these are kind of like in that grand narrative that I tell myself of like how I got here, because I always try to think about like how do we get here? Who goes to Yale and gets 2 degrees and then like raps? Like, who does that, right? It's still a daunting question for me. But I think of 3, definitely 2 moments in particular. One was in Cleveland, and did I tell you we have a Ford Escape? What was that car? The Ford Escort? It was like a green car.
A green Ford Escort, yes.
It was an Escort, right?
Yep.
And we'd be in the car with her, and she was like the cool auntie who played rap in the car. And Crisscross would come on the radio.
Yep.
And I don't know how old we were, but I could never do the wiggity 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 wet, right? I couldn't do it. I could, like, my mouth couldn't do it, right? And I always wanted to. I just wanted to be able to do the wiggity 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 wet, right? I just wanted to be able to do that. And I remember Aunt Reed, we'd be like, Aunt Reed, do it, and she would do it flawlessly, right? And I remember being like, yo, I want to do that. I want to be able to do that. That just sounded so fire. Like, I don't even know what that was. It was like this flurry hurricane of sound. I wanted to do that. And that I always remember that, like, very specific moment. I feel like it was on like Tarkington and Lee, like coming out from Carouge Park, somewhere around. I'm like, there's like a space that's associated with that memory. And I think about that. And then I also think about in 98 when Lauryn Hill dropped The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Mm-hmm. And I listened to it. And like, we were church kids, man. Like, we grew up in church. So I didn't really listen to, like, at the time it would have been called secular music. I didn't really listen to it like that heavy. So I was like, we're sitting there singing hymns and stuff in choir rehearsal. That was dope to me. Rap came a little bit after that. But Lauryn Hill came out with The Miseducation, and I listened to it and I like fell in love with it. And I'm like, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. I remember that very specifically. I don't quite know which song it was that made me have that feeling, but that album gave me that feeling. I'm like, if this is a thing you can do for somebody else and give somebody else this feeling, I want to do that. I was like, it felt like love, it felt like worship, it felt like depth, it felt like a lot of things mixed into one. And she was like singing and rapping and doing, it was a lot happening in that project. And that's another piece. And then the third is kind of like a hodgepodge of high school, which was like when we first started recording, right? So like that 2003 song you mentioned, much evolution has transpired since that moment. But the ability to like record music and like write a thing, think about music being composed, mm-hmm. and then record that thing, and then listening to it after that, like the creation of a thing was like addictive. That I remember in high school, it was addictive. Shout out to Hailing Price.
Hailing Price, indeed.
We used to go to his house in New Rochelle, and I used to just love going over there because we could create things. It's like you have an idea about something, you make the thing, and then it exists. And that was addictive. I wanted to be over there all the time. And like, I feel like I was over there often. But I just wanted to keep doing that. I'm like, I want to do that. Like, I want to do that. And there's been a bunch of albums along the way and a bunch of artists who've shown me ways to think about identity as an artist so that it can still be true for me. So I think about folks like Kanye, early Kanye.
Mm-hmm.
College Dropout was a huge project for me. Food and Liquor by Lupe Fiasco was a huge record for me. The Black Album by Jay-Z was a huge record for me. Like those are all, I remember all of those things as being like, yo, I want to do this. It was weird because, you know, we was at a rich white prep school and I was on my way to like an Ivy League school. So I'm like, how am I gonna do this? Which is associated with all this stuff over here. While I'm in this space, which is associated with all this stuff over here. And, you know, I just never stopped. So, and then I started getting a little more free. So here we are. There's a lot of things that transpired in that space and time, but here we are.
A little more free. Can you go into that?
We go, how real we getting, baby? How real?
I mean, we're getting real. I mean, we can get
real. We getting. Let's put it this way. I have long divorced myself from doing anything in service of white supremacy. And for a large period of time, you know, by being a larger bodied Black man in white spaces, there are things I was conditioned to and things that I conditioned myself to do in order to fit in and survive spaces. So after a lot of that, and being around other people who had gone through similar things, and reflecting a lot, especially when I was in divinity school, on the rightness or wrongness of code switching, I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And that's there is privilege attached to that, but also there's liberation attached to that. So when it comes to like saying I don't need to be attached to an institution, I don't need to be attached to white things or white folks to be successful, there's some liberation that comes along with that. And with that comes into like, all right, what is my purpose? What am I really here for? What is the method for me to deliver or to enact my purpose? So those are all questions that I grapple with. I still grapple with. I don't think that grappling is gonna end anytime soon. But yeah, that's the part of where the liberation comes from, which is an exploration of like what my purpose really is, where I should be, and where I don't need to be, and where I'm called to and where I am not called to. So that's all been like a huge process. It's still a process. But that's what I mean when I say getting free. Asking more questions instead of trying to answer more people.
Wow. So if someone is trying to, as an artist, as a filmmaker, is trying to get free or experience the freedom that you're speaking about, what words of advice or encouragement would you have for them to go on that journey?
First thing is to keep on living. I mean, as best as possible. When I say that, I mean like living abundantly, right? And like asking a lot of questions. A lot of mirror work and self-work. I would say research, reading and researching things and learning things. I consider myself a lifelong learner. I'm going to be learning as long as I'm breathing. I'm going to be learning something. So that the posture of being forever learning is important, I think, for anybody, but especially for folks who want to create things. Because I think there's always new things we can learn. And once we've learned all the things, then we really getting into the weeds. And yeah, I would just say like, you know, be in a listening posture, listening to your own gut, listening to your source, your creator, or, you know, however folks identify, right? Like listening to that voice. And yeah, just trying to stay true. You know what I'm saying? It's easier said than done, but I think when we think about doing it, it's easier to do. So, yeah. That's what I would say.
All right.
But we got to put the work in. We got to read. We got to research. We got to put the work in.
Some very, very good words of wisdom. So we're nearing the end of our time. Looking at the comment section, we had another cousin from Michigan, from Detroit area, Vivian Dean Reynolds said, "What's up?"
What up?
Mama Lil has sent several emojis, and the heart emojis. She said she loves the two of us, which is great.
Of course they are. Of course she does. Love you too, Mama.
The first guest on our show on Meet the Producers, V. Helena Yancey, has a special request. I don't know about the. We'll see. She asked. She said, "Please freestyle for us."
Freestyle.
Yes, she said freestyle, and that is a request. I don't know if we're gonna have time for that in the segment here, but I did want to raise that was a request.
Thank you for the request.
I will say that to hear his music, there are a couple of different platforms you can go to. One is officially jp.com. And then also on YouTube,
yes,
you can find him. His music is also all over the various virtual streaming platforms such as Spotify, and I'm not an iPhone user, so I'll just say that other stuff. But no, his music is everywhere. Wow. No, but it's on.
Also just released a song called "How Many More."
Mm-hmm.
Which is out everywhere. We're working on getting about that.
Okay. All right. So the last segment of these Meet the Producers, I like to have a little fun. And so, I have a couple questions, top 5 type questions, and I hope you're ready for it. Are you ready?
Okay.
What are the top?
What
are the top 5 things that you do outside of music and filmmaking?
Top 5. Okay. When you say top 5, what do you mean? Like
activities. What are the top 5 activities you do outside of filmmaking music that bring you joy? I'll add that part to it.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Meditation and like working out. I have a ritual every morning that I do. It's really special to me. I take care of my plants. We live in a Harlem apartment, so the plants aren't huge, but I love them to death, and I'm glad that I have plants in my life. Okay, wait. Hey, those are 2.
It's tough.
I was gonna say 5 is actually a lot. I do like to read a lot. And when I say read a lot, I mean like articles and like legitimate articles, not like, other disinformation things. I like to check in on my folks. You know what I'm saying? My community is very important to me. So like communing with my people in any way possible is really important. I do play things pretty close to the chest, but like the folks who are close are really close. And I cherish my family and my really close friends. And then what I already mentioned physical things, right? Like activity, like physical activity, which includes yoga. I do yoga. I'm trying to get certified soon, so we'll see what happens with that. Okay. And then playing Scrabble. I love Scrabble. It's a really dope game. Okay. Scrabble and Tetris. I'm like, it's really strange because those are like, I love those games. They just, I literally could play Tetris all day long. I don't. I wish I could, but I would.
All right. So you've mentioned that you went to Yale University. Can you share with the folks something that you did there that was, took up a lot of your time that people may not necessarily know about you as like, knowing that you're an artist and a producer. But what is what are a couple of things that happened at Yale that you might that were pretty pretty cool?
Shameless plug. I played football at Yale, which took up a lot of time. Learned a lot of things. actually still close to a bunch of guys I play football with. Well, not a bunch, a couple. But yeah, football was a huge part of my college experience. Yeah, I mean, that was like, it was almost like 30 hours a week. It was wild, like in season. It was, and then we did it all year round. So it was a pretty large commitment. And I also was a part of an organization called the Black Men's Union. I was one of the people who started it over there. I was a charter member, which was wild to think I was a charter member. And this is a very little known fact. I don't even know if you know this, Josh.
Okay.
But there's a sandwich named after me.
I do know this.
At Yale.
Yes.
You do know this? Okay.
Yes.
That's actually like my claim to fame. I left that as last because that's my claim to fame at Yale University. Everybody gets assigned a residential college at Yale. So I was in a residential college called Davenport, basically like the dorm that you're associated with. And at Davenport, every single college has like an underground basement, and the underground basements have like these late night, like cafes pretty much. And Davenport's was called the Davenport Dive. And I think this may still be the case, but there's a sandwich named after me called the RJR. And it's a sandwich comprised of things that I don't even eat anymore. But that's my claim to fame. That's my claim to fame.
Yeah. Claim to fame. All right. Now this is part of something I alluded to earlier when I was running through my off the cuff bio of you. But do you have any special talents or skills that people may not know about? Any other business ventures that included those special talents or skills that people may not know about that Harvard may or may not have tried to tease you about with your bio?
I was like, what's
the Harvard
what's
Yale
trying to ask about right now? I'm like, what's she asking about? All right, so, oh wow, so I'm really, really, really good at baking sweet potato pies. Very strange, not strange, but just a very interesting thing, I guess. At least it's funny to me. And I used to have a sweet potato pie business where I sold pies. I had clientele. Literally, like they would order every couple of weeks, and I was baking pies, and I was delivering the pies in Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, Bronx area, and I was making some money. I had boxes, I had labels. This was when I was in high school, and because I was in high school, Harvard, yeah, we have that rivalry, and Harvard tried to play me in the Harvard Crimson. They even got people who started sweet potato pie businesses. What is that? Type of thing. They didn't understand the culture. They didn't understand what sweet potato pie meant to the folk, and they didn't understand how important it is if you can bake a sweet potato pie. And I had different styles. I had the traditional. I had the graham cracker crust. I had the pecan topping, and also I had a Hawaiian style sweet potato pie. And you could do a thing where you like mixed and matched any of those special differences.
Andrew Vidal March just posted fire. I think especially the pies. He must have been one of your clients. Shout out to Andrew.
He might have been. I don't know.
And the great.
I don't know if I saw one of Andrew March, man. That's hilarious. Yeah, that was a crazy time, man. Selling sweet potato pies. I was literally getting in the car and delivering. That was wild.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and what the Harvard Crimson missed out on was the fact that they usually celebrate their entrepreneurs, but they tried to tease you for being an entrepreneur. So it's clear that you've had it's clear that you've had an entrepreneurial spirit for a very, very long time.
Yeah, wait, did I wrap one of those canes that's back there?
No, I did.
Those are yours?
Well, kind of. I did one of them that actually has my picture on it. I did that. We put our pictures on it, and then which is ridiculous. And then the other one is a chapter cane that an older brother named Mike Fox, who's a business owner, entrepreneur out in the Detroit, Michigan area. He does those canes. He actually is an official vendor and everything with the national.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so thank you for spending an hour with your little brother, chatting about your artistic process, you being a filmmaker, accepting the title and the designation of filmmaker. He says you've never been called that before, but that is indeed what you are and what you have been ever since you started doing music.
Yeah,
realistically. So
one way to look at it. Shout out to all the filmmakers out there.
yes,
Who, put that work in.
Yes. I have to give a shout out to our Thursday night event. I will be interviewing Valerie Wilson Reed, who is the host of Cooks. So there's a cooking segment that is on American Legacy Network. Again, I encourage all who have yet to subscribe to American Legacy Network to log on to AmericanLegacyNetwork.tv and subscribe. There's a lot of content on there. You'll see the content from Mr. JP Reynolds, as well as the rest of the producers that I have the honor to interact with and interview and converse with here on the network. So thank you all for joining me again for tonight. See you all on Thursday evening as we continue to celebrate 25 years of the American Legacy brand.
Yeah, so, out here.
Thank you. I'm gonna give you the last word for the live stream. How can people get in touch with you, access your music, access you? How do we do that?
On my website, officiallyjp.com. Sign up for my email list. It's a weekly newsletter. I don't spam you too crazy at all. I don't spam at all, really. My music is available on all of the digital streaming platforms. Subscribe to me on YouTube, JP Reynolds. And yeah, stay in touch. I mean, my Instagram is where most of my folks are. Follow me there. I'm accessible. DM me. Comment on my stuff. Yeah, we out here. New things are coming soon.
Awesome.
New things are always coming soon.
Awesome. So
my last word is peace and power, baby.
All right. Peace and power. Thank you, everyone, for joining.